April 14th, 1943. Fleet Radio Unit Pacific, Pearl Harbor. A pencil scratches across paper as intercepted Japanese naval code transforms into English. Technical Sergeant Harold Feudener, a Nisei translator, double-checks his work against the original cipher. His hands tremble slightly as he realizes what he's reading. Inspection tour schedule. Admiral Yamamoto. Exact departure times. Specific aircraft types. Precise routes. Commander Edwin Leighton's eyes widen as the decoded message lands on his desk. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, architect of Pearl Harbor, will be within range of American fighters for exactly one window of opportunity. What none of them know is that this single decoded message will trigger the most audacious fighter interception in aviation history. A mission so dangerous, so precise, that it will redefine what's possible in aerial warfare. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto is not just a naval commander. He's a symbol, the embodiment of Japanese naval power, the strategic genius who orchestrated Pearl Harbor with mathematical precision. But there's a profound irony to Yamamoto. Harvard-educated, poker-playing, he understands America better than any Japanese commander. He hitchhiked across the United States in the 1920s, observing automobile factories in Detroit, oil refineries in Texas, aircraft plants in California. The experience convinced him that war with America was ultimately unwinnable, a conviction he expressed in his famous warning. "I can run wild for 6 months, maybe a year, but after that I have no confidence." His warnings were ignored, his reluctance overruled. Yet once committed, he nearly delivered decisive triumph at Midway before American codebreakers turned the tide. Now, in April 1943, the Pacific War has taught American forces a brutal lesson. Kill the symbol, and you shatter morale across an entire fleet. The weapon for this impossible mission sits on the tarmac at Henderson Field, Guadalcanal. The Lockheed P-38 Lightning, twin-boomed, twin-engined, capable of 414 miles per hour. With external drop tanks, it can achieve a combat radius exceeding 450 miles. No other American fighter in the Pacific can match that range. But range alone won't be enough. Major John Mitchell stands in the operations dugout, studying the tactical problem like a chess grandmaster contemplating an endgame. Distance from Guadalcanal to intercept point, 435 miles direct. But flying direct would take them over Japanese-held islands bristling with radar installations. The indirect route, swinging far out to sea, adds 165 miles. Total distance, 1,000 miles round trip. Fuel reserves for perhaps 7 minutes of combat at war emergency power. The mathematics are unforgiving. Mitchell works through the calculations. Fuel consumption, wind drift, magnetic deviation, time over target. A deviation of 1 degree sustained over the distance would put them miles off course with insufficient fuel to search. The margin for error is essentially zero. Captain Thomas Lanphier, Jr., 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, with the confident bearing of a natural leader. Son of a decorated World War I aviator, he sees the Yamamoto mission as his ticket to fame and post-war political success. At 27, he's already claimed 5 aerial victories, though some are disputed. His aggressive flying style and talent for self-promotion have earned him both admirers and detractors. First Lieutenant Rex Barber represents a different breed entirely. Oregon farm boy, engineering student, he flies with mechanical precision and quiet competence. Where Lanphier seeks glory, Barber seeks efficiency. His aerial victories come through careful positioning and accurate gunnery rather than spectacular aerobatics. His methodical approach reflects his engineering background. Every action calculated, every risk assessed, every shot carefully aimed. These two men will soon be locked in a controversy that lasts decades. 400 miles north, aboard a Mitsubishi G4M1 bomber at Rabaul, Admiral Yamamoto reviews his inspection schedule. The Betty bomber, as Americans call it, achieves exceptional range through a dangerous compromise. Minimal armor, no self-sealing fuel tanks. Japanese crews grimly call it the Type 1 lighter, for its tendency to burst into flames when hit. At 59 years old, Yamamoto remains Japan's most formidable strategic thinker. He stands just 5'3", but carries himself with samurai dignity. His left hand bears evidence of combat at Tsushima Strait in 1905, 2 fingers lost to Russian shrapnel. The injury never diminished his passion for calligraphy, his skill at poker, or his ability to command respect through sheer force of personality. Several staff officers will later testify that on this morning, Yamamoto seemed to have premonitions about the flight. The decision to act requires approval from the highest levels: Admiral Chester Nimitz, Admiral William Halsey, Rear Admiral Mark Mitcher, and ultimately President Franklin Roosevelt himself, who allegedly gives the simple order, "Get Yamamoto." The risk is enormous. If the mission fails with heavy losses, it might reveal American code-breaking capabilities while achieving nothing. If publicity leaks prematurely, the Japanese might change their codes entirely, blinding American intelligence. But Yamamoto represents a unique target, a commander whose abilities cannot be replaced. Marine Major John Kandan creates the initial flight plan. Mitchell reviews it and throws it out. The airspeeds are wrong, the timing unsuitable for the P-38's capabilities. Mitchell recalculates everything from scratch, working through the night. The final route consists of 5 precisely calculated legs, each designed to avoid Japanese radar coverage. Leg 1. Magnetic heading 265 degrees for 55 minutes at 30 to 50 feet altitude. Leg 2. Heading 290 degrees for 27 minutes. Each leg calculated to compensate for wind drift and magnetic deviation. Mitchell will navigate for the entire formation using only dead reckoning, compass, airspeed indicator, clock, and mental calculation. No radio beacons. No landmarks over the endless Pacific swells. One man's navigation skills will determine whether 18 aircraft find their target or disappear into the vast Pacific. April 17th, 1943. The mission briefing begins at 2000 hours. Rear Admiral Mitcher, who commanded USS Hornet during the Doolittle raid exactly 1 year earlier, personally addresses the assembled pilots. The symbolism is deliberate and powerful. 18 P-38s will participate. 4 aircraft, the killer flight, will attack the bombers directly. 12 will provide top cover. The pilots selected for the killer flight, Lanphier, Barber, Holmes, and Hine. The survival equipment reflects the mission's desperate nature. West life preservers, though survival chances in shark-infested waters are minimal. Jungle survival kits for bailouts over Bougainville. Each pilot carries a Colt .45 pistol, knowing that capture means certain execution. Japanese treatment of downed American aviators has become increasingly brutal. Beheadings, medical experiments without anesthesia, confirmed cases of cannibalism. Running out of fuel over water means almost certain death from exposure or sharks. Mechanical failure over Japanese territory means something worse. Pre-dawn darkness, April 18th, 1943. Ground crews perform final preparations. Master Sergeant Leo Godfrey supervises the arming crews. Fuel tanks topped off to absolute capacity. Ammunition belts loaded with ball, armor-piercing, and incendiary rounds. Drop tank attachments checked and rechecked. At 7:25 hours, Mitchell's P-38s begin taking off. Lieutenant McLanahan's aircraft suffers a blown tire on takeoff, eliminated from the mission. Lieutenant Joe Moore's fuel transfer pump fails during climbout, forced to return immediately. 16 P-38s continue. The margin for error, already razor-thin, has diminished further. Mitchell leads the formation at exactly 30 to 50 feet above the water to avoid Japanese radar. Salt spray coats the windscreens within minutes. The pilots fly in radio silence, maintaining position through visual reference alone. 2 hours and 5 minutes of formation, flying at extreme low altitude, constantly adjusting throttles, scanning engine instruments while avoiding spatial disorientation. The Pacific swells roll beneath them in endless succession, hypnotic in their regularity. Several pilots later report fighting drowsiness, slapping their own faces, singing loudly to maintain alertness. The sun blazes through the plexiglass canopies, turning the cockpits into ovens. Each pilot fights his own private battle. Burn too much fuel outbound, and they won't make it home. Conserve too much, and they might lack power for combat maneuvering. The mathematics of survival play out in 16 cockpits simultaneously. Meanwhile, at 600 hours Tokyo time, Yamamoto's formation departs Rabaul exactly on schedule. The admiral wears his dress white uniform with full decorations. His mood is reportedly somber. Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki, his chief of staff, occupies the second bomber. The formation climbs to 6,500 feet. 60 fighters take escort position. Visibility is excellent with scattered cumulus clouds. Warrant Officer Kenji Yanagiya, flying escort, scans the sky with patterns drilled through years of training. 3 years of combat have developed his instincts to near supernatural levels. Yet this morning, his attention focuses on maintaining formation. American fighters have never penetrated this far north in strength. The greatest danger seems to be operational accidents rather than enemy action. At 9:34 hours, Mitchell's formation reaches the final navigation term point precisely on schedule. They've been airborne for 2 hours and 9 minutes, flying entirely by dead reckoning over trackless ocean. Mitchell checks his watch against his calculated position. If his navigation is correct, they should turn northwest now. If he's made any error, they'll miss the target entirely. He waggles his wings. 16 P-38s bank in unison toward Bougainville. The timing is extraordinary, exactly 1 minute ahead of schedule after covering 410 miles with only compass, clock, and airspeed. Lieutenant Douglas Canning, Mitchell's wingman, spots them first. Bogies, 11 o'clock high, range approximately 5 miles, altitude differential 6,000 feet, 8 aircraft in perfect formation, exactly where they're supposed to be. Mitchell feels a surge of adrenaline mixed with amazement. They've found the needle in the Pacific haystack. 2 Betty bombers and 60 fighters, completely unaware of the 16 P-38s climbing toward them from below and behind. Skin your tanks, all flights. Let's get 'em. Drop tanks tumble toward the ocean. Engines push to war emergency power, 1,475 horsepower per engine. The Lightnings accelerate through 300 miles per hour, climbing at 2,800 feet per minute. The escort Zeros react. They've spotted the approaching P-38s, dropping their belly tanks, peeling off to engage. Standard doctrine: protect the bombers by intercepting the attackers. Lanphier makes an instant tactical decision that will generate decades of controversy. Instead of continuing toward the bombers with Barber, he turns to engage the diving Zeros head-on. His reasoning, as he'll later claim, eliminate the escort threat to allow Barber a clear attack run. His critics will argue he was glory hunting, seeking easier fighter kills over the primary target. Lieutenant Barber maintains course toward the bombers, now diving desperately toward the jungle canopy. The lead Betty noses over into a steep dive, the pilot attempting to reach treetop level where the P-38's speed advantage would be minimized. Barber pushes his Lightning into a 45-degree dive, airspeed indicator climbing past 400 miles per hour. The distance closes rapidly, 2,000 yards, 1,500, 1,000. At 500 yards, Barber opens fire with all weapons. 4 streams of .50 caliber bullets and 20 cannon shells converge on the bomber's right engine and wing root. The effect is instantaneous and catastrophic. The Betty's right engine explodes in orange flames. The wing spar severs. The bomber rolls violently left, completely out of control. Barber pulls up hard to avoid collision, his P-38 groaning under G-forces. He glimpses the Betty disappearing into the jungle canopy, trailing fire and debris. A black column of smoke marks the impact point. 1 bomber down. But which one carried Yamamoto? Holmes spots the second Betty low over the water, racing south along the Bougainville coastline at maximum speed. He rolls into attack position, but his closure rate is excessive. He damages the Betty's right engine, but overshoots before achieving decisive damage. Barber acquires the second bomber. The Betty is barely 50 feet above the waves, its damaged engine trailing smoke. Barber lines up for a deflection shot, leading the target by 30 degrees. His first burst walks across the water, sending up geysers of spray, then climbs into the bomber's fuselage. Large pieces of metal skin peel away. The Betty's left engine catches fire. The pilot attempts a controlled water landing, but hits the ocean at over 100 miles per hour. The aircraft breaks apart on impact. Meanwhile, Lanphier engages the Zeros in violent maneuvering. He'll later claim to have shot down 1-0 during this engagement. Japanese records show no escort fighters were lost. The entire engagement lasts less than 10 minutes. Time over target, perhaps 3 minutes of actual combat. Barber's P-38 has sustained significant damage, 104 bullet holes from return fire. Hydraulic fluid leaks from punctured lines. One engine runs rough, but both Allison engines continue to function. The long flight home begins. Fuel reserves are critically low for several aircraft. Radio discipline is maintained despite the temptation to call for help. Each pilot is alone with his calculations. At 12:30 hours, Henderson Field appears ahead exactly where expected. Several aircraft are operating on fumes. Holmes lands with both engines sputtering, his fuel tanks essentially dry. Others land with less than 10 gallons remaining, perhaps 3 minutes of flight time. The margin between triumph and disaster has been measured in gallons of gasoline. The immediate question, had they succeeded? Which bomber carried Yamamoto? That evening, Captain Lanphier immediately begins promoting his version of events. He claims to have shot down Yamamoto's bomber after a spectacular vertical reversal maneuver, rolling inverted and firing from above. His account would require him to be in two places simultaneously. Lieutenant Barber quietly disputes this version, describing his straightforward stern attack on the lead bomber. Japanese search parties find Admiral Yamamoto's crashed bomber the following day. The wreckage is scattered through dense jungle approximately 4 miles inland. Yamamoto's body is discovered thrown clear of the wreckage, but still strapped in his seat, maintaining a dignified posture even in death. His white-gloved hand still clutches his ceremonial sword. Medical examination reveals 2 gunshot wounds. One bullet entered below his left shoulder blade, exiting above his right eye. Another struck his jaw. Death was instantaneous, probably during Barber's initial firing pass. The psychological impact on the Japanese Navy is devastating beyond calculation. Yamamoto was not merely a fleet commander, but the embodiment of Japanese naval tradition. His understanding of combined fleet operations was unmatched. His realistic assessment of American capabilities had provided the only check on Japanese strategic overreach. Captain Yasuji Watanabe, who survived the second bomber's crash, later describes the admiral's death as the void that could never be filled. Japanese naval intelligence immediately suspects the Americans have broken their codes. The precision of the intercept, arriving at exactly the right place and time after a 600-mile flight, seems impossible through coincidence. But acknowledging code compromise would require admitting catastrophic intelligence failure. The American reaction is initially subdued due to security concerns. President Roosevelt receives the news with grim satisfaction, but orders absolute secrecy. For over a month, the American public remains unaware that Yamamoto is dead. The dispute over who shot down Yamamoto begins immediately and will poison relationships for decades. Lanphier aggressively promotes his claim. His account evolves and becomes more elaborate over time, describing extreme maneuvers that would violate the laws of physics. Barber's account remains modest and consistent with physical evidence. Japanese witnesses, including Zero pilot Yanagia, interviewed after the war, confirm seeing only one P-38 attack the lead bomber, approaching from behind and below, exactly as Barber described. The angle of bullet impacts on Yamamoto's body matches Barber's attack geometry perfectly. In 2003, after extensive analysis of Japanese records, crash site evidence, and witness testimony, historians conclude that Barber alone was responsible for shooting down Yamamoto. Major Mitchell, who led the mission with extraordinary skill, receives the Navy Cross rather than the Medal of Honor originally recommended. His extraordinary navigation, finding a moving target after 600 miles of dead reckoning, deserves greater recognition than inter-service politics allow. Japanese naval aviation never recovers from Yamamoto's loss. His successor, Admiral Mainichi Koga, lacks his strategic vision and charismatic leadership. Koga dies in a plane crash less than a year later, another blow to Japanese naval leadership. Yamamoto had been portrayed in Japanese propaganda as invincible. His death shatters this mythology. If Yamamoto could be hunted down and killed, what does that say about Japan's prospects? Morale throughout the Japanese military begins a decline that accelerates with each subsequent defeat. The timing holds special significance. Exactly 1 year after the Doolittle raid on Tokyo, American fighters strike at the heart of Japanese military leadership. The symbolism is intentional and powerful. America can reach out across vast distances to strike specific targets with surgical precision. No Japanese commander is safe. The hunters have become the hunted. Admiral Yamamoto's death represents more than the loss of one commander. His unique understanding of American capabilities had provided Japan's only realistic strategic vision. He alone among Japanese leaders truly comprehended American industrial capacity and political will. His replacement by commanders who believe in spiritual superiority over material reality accelerates Japan's defeat. The mission demonstrates the synthesis of American warfare at its most effective. Superior technology guided by precise intelligence. Careful planning executed with tactical flexibility. Individual excellence within coordinated team effort. American pilots who flew the mission struggle with conflicting emotions. They've succeeded in killing a respected adversary, a man many acknowledge as a military genius. Yamamoto opposed war with America, understanding its futility better than those who ordered him to plan it. Yet he orchestrated Pearl Harbor, making him a legitimate target for retribution. The moral complexity of targeted assassination, even in wartime, troubles some participants for decades. The legacy of Operation Vengeance extends beyond its immediate military impact. It demonstrates that individual leadership still matters in industrialized warfare, that precise intelligence can enable surgical military strikes, that technological superiority means nothing without human skills to employ it effectively. April 18th, 1943, dawns with 18 American pilots preparing for an impossible mission. It ends with Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto dead in the Bougainville jungle, Japan's naval strategy in ruins, and American victory in the Pacific increasingly inevitable. The longest fighter intercept mission in history achieves its objective through brilliant planning, superior technology, exceptional flying skills, and extraordinary luck. The 16 P-38 Lightnings that returned to Guadalcanal that afternoon have changed the course of the Pacific War. Their pilots flew to the very edge of mechanical and human endurance, fought a brief but decisive battle, and returned to tell the tale. In those few minutes over Bougainville, they achieved what thousands of bombers and millions of bullets could not: the precise elimination of irreplaceable enemy leadership. Operation Vengeance delivers exactly what its name promises: revenge for Pearl Harbor and the elimination of Japan's most dangerous military mind.